Millionaire thought he had the last laugh. Then his ex showed up with triplets. Weddings, business deals, and red carpet galas often showcase the triumphs of life. But sometimes the harshest surprises arrive when you least expect them. Oliver Harrington, a cunning millionaire with an ego as sky-high as the Shard in London, believed he'd outsmarted fate. He'd built an empire from scratch, climbed social ladders, and left behind anyone he deemed unworthy of his ambitions, including his ex-girlfriend. But on the eve of a pivotal celebration, his carefully sculpted world shook to its foundations. Returning like a thunderclap, that same ex appeared at the height of his glory with not one, but 3 hidden reminders of a past he thought he'd buried. Immediate karma never looked so stunning. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. Oliver Harrington leaned against the marble counter of his Knightsbridge penthouse, flicking through messages on his phone. The city lights twinkled through floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting on polished floors. At 38, Oliver embodied the kind of success that made business magazines drool, a self-made millionaire whose skill in real estate investments turned old warehouses into sleek condominiums and run-down neighborhoods into pricey hotspots. Whether it was striking deals in Hong Kong or chatting up aristocrats at the Savoy, Oliver knew how to get what he wanted. His phone pinged with the final confirmation, a black tie event at the Victoria and Albert Museum to celebrate his new philanthropic venture. He'd grown used to these glitzy nights, crowds of sycophants, cameras flashing, and endless champagne from Fortnum and Mason. It was all part of the brand he had cultivated. Oliver Harrington, unstoppable mogul, gentleman in a tailored suit, charmer of the social elite. What few people knew was that Oliver had once struggled in the underbelly of London, living in a cramped flat, scraping coins for the next meal. And what almost no one knew was that in those lean times, he'd had a girlfriend named Naomi Carter. She was the kind of woman who gave him genuine warmth and believed in him when no one else did. But in his eyes, she lacked the polish and connections to match his grand ambitions. So when he got his first taste of wealth, Oliver left Naomi behind in the dust without a proper goodbye. The next day, Oliver walked into the lobby of his newest high-rise. A swirl of tuxedoed men and elegantly dressed women stood waiting for limousines to ferry them to the big event. This building, dubbed Harrington Heights, was a testament to his success, a sleek tower of steel and glass rising above the city. Standing among the crowd, sipping cocktails, were media personalities itching to interview him and investors eager to glean insider secrets. Oliver smiled, exchanging pleasantries. He was a practiced showman, weaving stories about architectural innovation and his philanthropic pledge to fund art education programs across schools in London's struggling areas. A reformed scoundrel with a heart of gold, some tabloids dubbed him. But even as he spoke of generosity, his mind was on the evening strategy: cultivate more influential allies, encourage wealthy donors to open their wallets, and solidify his status as a cultured man of taste. Yet beneath the surface of Oliver's polished mask, restlessness lurked. He sometimes felt a tug of guilt from the life he'd abandoned, a smaller, more honest existence with Naomi, who'd believed in him wholeheartedly. She'd once told him, "Oliver, if you make it big, don't forget where you come from." But as his net worth soared, he'd done precisely that. To soothe his conscience, he told himself Naomi never fit into his sphere anyway. I had to move forward. She would have held me back. That was his mantra. As he headed out to the line of idling luxury cars, Oliver received a text from his longtime associate, Sebastian. Heard Naomi Carter's back in London. Be careful. Oliver froze momentarily, the letters practically glowing on his phone. He frowned. Naomi's return seemed improbable. She'd left for Manchester after their breakup. He'd even heard rumors she might move to the US. Oliver typed an immediate reply. Where did you hear that? She's not relevant anymore. Sebastian's answer arrived in seconds. Just keep your eyes open. Oliver shrugged off the unease creeping up his neck. She can't affect me, he reassured himself, sliding into the back seat of a black limousine. I'm too high up the ladder now to be disturbed by the past. The car pulled away from Harrington Heights, merging into the London traffic. The Victoria and Albert Museum's facade gleamed under spotlights, a backdrop of centuries-old grandeur for Oliver's modern spectacle. The night air crackled with anticipation as CIPs, donors and press photographers gathered on a plush red carpet. Oliver arrived with a flourish, stepping out of the limousine. Cameras flashed, and he gave them his trademark confident grin, a grin that got him into tabloids and business covers alike. Inside the museum, the main hall was transformed into an elegant reception space. Soft classical music from a live quartet mingled with the clink of crystal glasses. Oliver moved from group to group, exuding charm, discussing art exhibitions and promising expansions of his philanthropic fund. He was in his element, soaking up praise and applause. The official ceremony began with a short documentary on Oliver's rise. Applause erupted at images of him revitalizing dilapidated neighborhoods. Then the host invited Oliver to the podium. He adjusted his cufflinks, basking in the attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice resonating in the grand hall, "thank you for supporting this vision. Our new initiative, the Future Canvas Fund, will sponsor aspiring artists from disadvantaged backgrounds." Art opened my eyes to possibilities when I had so little. He paused, scanning the room. Movement near the entrance caught his attention. His heart thumped. A woman in a simple but elegant black dress stood near a statue, half concealed by the crowd. Her posture, her silhouette, he recognized them. Naomi Carter. For a split second, Oliver faltered, losing his train of thought. But he quickly composed himself. Clearing his throat, he wrapped up the speech. The audience cheered, oblivious to the tension that had just crackled through him. By the time Oliver finished, the woman was gone. He wondered if he'd imagined her. Yet the possibility Naomi truly was here set his nerves on edge. After all these years, why would she show up? To humiliate me, he wondered. He could almost hear her voice from back then, scolding him for vanity, but Oliver shrugged it off. He believed any confrontation would be a momentary inconvenience. I'm too powerful for her words to matter now. Milling around the reception, Oliver made his rounds. But his eyes kept darting to every corner, half expecting to see Naomi reappear. When a wealthy patron approached him with a question about the philanthropic fund, Oliver forced a smile. "I appreciate your support," he intoned. The patron responded by promising a sizable donation. Oliver nodded graciously, mind still stuck on that flicker of Naomi's face. An hour passed in a whirl of champagne toasts and small talk. Then, in a corridor leading to a side gallery, Oliver spotted her again definitely. Naomi, speaking quietly with a museum staff member. She glanced over her shoulder and met Oliver's gaze. Instead of shrinking away, she held his stare, then excused herself to walk toward him. His pulse kicked. Memories flashed of their old apartment with squeaky floors, nights of homemade dinners, laughter on a shoestring budget. Naomi in pajamas, urging him not to lose himself in greed. Now, seeing her again, he felt a strange mix of guilt and curiosity. She seemed more confident, her eyes resolute, her hair swept back in a stylish updo. A wave of envy flickered at how well she carried herself. Oliver put on a show of nonchalance, raising an eyebrow as Naomi approached. "Long time no see," he said, voice laced with casual arrogance. "Didn't expect you to appear at my event." He gestured to the elegant surroundings. "It's quite a far cry from where we were, wouldn't you say?" Naomi's lips tightened into a polite, humorless smile. "Yes, it's different, but I had a reason to come." He nodded, adopting a smug expression. "Come to see me soared to success. Hoping to ask for a favor, maybe?" Her eyes flashed with anger. She let out a small sigh. "I see you haven't changed that much, Oliver." Then she straightened her posture. "I do have something to discuss with you, privately." Oliver hesitated. The place crawled with press. He imagined headlines about an ex-stirring drama at his big philanthropic night. "We can talk tomorrow," he suggested, trying to brush her off. "I'm busy entertaining donors." Naomi squared her shoulders. "Tomorrow, then. Meet me at the cafe near Borough Market at noon." She turned, already walking away. Oliver found himself momentarily stunned that she'd just demanded a meeting on her terms. As he opened his mouth to protest, Naomi vanished into the crowd. Immediate tension plagued him. He told himself he'd show up just to quell any potential gossip or scandal. "She's not going to sabotage everything I've built," he thought. "I'll handle her." The next day, Oliver awoke to the panoramic view of London's skyline from his penthouse. The usual satisfaction he felt seeing the city laid out below him was absent. Instead, he recalled Naomi's unwavering stance. What could she want after all these years? His mind replayed how he'd ended things so coldly. "But so what?" he reasoned. "She should have known I was meant for bigger things." His schedule was jam-packed: morning calls with prospective investors, a lunch scheduled with a CEO. Yet he found himself shuffling them, making space for that noon meeting at Borough Market. He told his assistant it was personal business. The assistant, unaccustomed to personal affairs taking precedence, raised an eyebrow but complied. By 11:30, Oliver was en route to the cafe in a discreet, chauffeured sedan. He wore a dark suit, crisp shirt, no tie, and a watch that cost more than most people's yearly salary. On arrival, he navigated the bustling market stalls, ignoring the lively chatter of tourists and the smell of fresh bread. The cafe was small, unpretentious, a stark contrast to the posh establishments he preferred. Inside, Naomi waited at a corner table, sipping tea. She wore a neatly pressed blouse and jeans, a blend of casual and confident. Oliver slid into the seat across from her. "So," he began, "what's so urgent that you drag me here?" Naomi eyed him calmly. "Let's cut to the chase. I'm not here to revisit old wounds or beg for anything, but there's something you need to know." She reached into her leather bag and removed a folder. Oliver's stomach knotted. "Don't tell me it's blackmail," he thought. She placed it on the table. "This is about them." Oliver stared at the folder, uncertain. "Them?" he repeated. Without waiting, Naomi opened it, revealing 3 birth certificates. Oliver felt as if time slowed. Each certificate bore the same father's name, Oliver Harrington. The date of birth was nearly 3 years prior. He stared in shock, words failing him. She paused, letting the gravity sink in. "Meet your children, our children," Naomi said softly, voice tinged with sadness. "Triplets. 2 girls and a boy." His mind reeled. Impossible. He rifled through the documents, searching for errors. The births had occurred well after they'd last been together, but evidently close enough to the tail end of their relationship that it made sense biologically. He recalled the last few heated arguments they'd had, how she'd asked if they could slow down, maybe settle with less luxurious ambitions. He'd refused, storming off. They parted ways soon after. Was it that same month? Naomi reached into her bag again, pulling out photos: 3 toddlers with big brown eyes, curly hair, and undeniably familiar features. Oliver felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. The resemblance was uncanny. One daughter had his exact dimpled smile, the other had his intense gaze, and the boy had his chin. His world pitched. He tried to speak, but only managed to choke. But why didn't you tell me? She gave him a scathing look. I tried, Oliver, multiple times. You changed your number, blocked me on social media, and had your assistant filter out all personal communications. After a while, I realized you didn't want anything from me. I gave birth alone, raised them alone, and found a way to survive alone. Anger bubbled in Oliver's chest, though it aimed mostly at himself. Yet pride refused to let him apologize. Instead, he demanded, "Why show up now? Are you after money?" Naomi's nostrils flared. Money? Do you know how humiliating it was to see your face on every business magazine, bragging about philanthropic missions, while ignoring the existence of your own children? I came back because it's time you faced reality. I can't do this alone forever, and they deserve to know their father. Oliver glimpsed immediate karma in her words. All the arrogance he'd flaunted the previous night, all the condescension he'd directed at her, now it boomeranged with crushing force. He sank back, heart pounding. The pictures of the triplets blurred before his eyes. "How do I know these are my kids?" he asked, though the question sounded pathetic. "They look exactly like me." Naomi slid another sheet across the table, a DNA test from a reputable lab on Harley Street. 99.9% paternal match. Oliver's shoulders slumped, and for once he was speechless. Outside, the market thrummed with life. Inside, tension held them hostage. After a loaded silence, Naomi exhaled. "If you want no involvement, fine. But I wanted you to see them at least once, to know they exist." She placed a trembling hand over the folder. "I'm not here to blackmail you, but they need stability. The rent on my flat is going up, and juggling 3 kids while working 2 jobs is barely manageable." Guilt twisted inside Oliver. The philanthropic front he'd paraded was overshadowed by the reality that 3 children of his own lived in precarious conditions. Shame gnawed at him. What kind of father ignores his own kids while throwing charity galas? He tried to maintain composure. "So what do you propose?" He half expected her to say she wanted a monthly sum. Instead, she blinked tears from her eyes. "They deserve a father's presence, some sense of family. I'd like you to meet them. See if you can stand up for them in any capacity. If you can't, then I'll go back to my life, and you can keep your empire." The vulnerability in her voice cut deeper than any argument. Oliver felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, resentment at being cornered, fear of fatherhood, and a peculiar pang of longing for something he'd never known he wanted. He forced himself to speak calmly. "Let's set a time. I'll meet them." Naomi nodded, relief and uncertainty washing over her. "Tomorrow afternoon at my flat in Islington, 3 o'clock. Then she stood, gathering the folder. Her parting words were quiet. "Don't make promises you won't keep." The next day, Oliver arrived in Islington, a neighborhood that lacked the glitz of Knightsbridge but had a certain charm. He parked his luxury car discreetly, not wanting to draw attention, and checked the address. The building was a modest 4-story block of flats, paint peeling in places. He felt strangely out of place, wearing an expensive coat that likely cost more than some residents' annual rent. He climbed the creaking stairs to Naomi's door. His heart thudded. Me, a father. The thought alone unsettled him, but an even bigger fear was the immediate confrontation with 3 toddlers. Triplets, he reminded himself, the word still unbelievable. Naomi answered in jeans and a simple sweater, her hair tied back in a no-nonsense ponytail. She stepped aside so he could enter. The living room was small but tidy, littered with children's toys. A worn sofa sat against one wall, a coffee table covered with crayons and coloring books. To the side, 3 small chairs lined up, each with a stuffed animal perched on it. Then he saw them, 2 girls and 1 boy, identical in their curly hair, but each sporting distinct features. They huddled near a plastic playhouse. On seeing Naomi, 1 girl beamed, but at the sight of Oliver, they shrank back shyly. Naomi crouched by them. "Come, babies, this is Mr. Harrington," she said softly. Her voice shook slightly at the formal introduction, but she persevered. He wants to meet you." Oliver hesitated. "How do you greet 3 kids who are your own, but essentially strangers?" He swallowed, kneeling to their level. "Hi," he said awkwardly. "I'm Oliver." 1 girl clung to Naomi's leg, the other eyed him curiously. The boys stared with wide eyes. None of them spoke. Oliver realized with a jolt that they were too young to fully understand. He offered them a small wave, feeling more vulnerable than he had at any board meeting or press conference. Minutes passed, and Oliver tried to engage. He was shockingly inept at small talk for toddlers, but Naomi guided him. "Want to show him your pictures?" she prompted the children. The 2nd girl, bolder than the rest, toddled over to a table and grabbed a coloring sheet. Her scribbles forming a rainbow, she thrust it at Oliver. He blinked, forced a smile. "That's lovely." She giggled, warming slightly. Naomi poured 2 cups of tea and gestured for Oliver to sit on the worn sofa. The triplets, fascinated by his posh clothes and aura of strangeness, hovered at a safe distance. During the next half hour, Oliver learned their names: Lily, Iris, and James. He heard about their individual quirks. Lily adored crayons, Iris loved building blocks, and James was fixated on toy trains. Despite the initial awkwardness, Oliver felt something stirring, a sense of awe, perhaps. They were his own flesh and blood, 3 tiny individuals who carried pieces of him in their laugh, smile, or stare. But overshadowing that wonder was a gnawing sense of regret. He had missed out on their infancy, their first steps, first words, all because he was too busy scaling the social ladder, shutting out any distraction. When they finally lost interest in him and scampered off to chase each other around the living room, Oliver turned to Naomi. "They're incredible," he admitted softly, meaning every word. Naomi's gaze flicked to the children. "I did my best, but it's hard alone. If you're serious about being in their lives, it can't be half-hearted." Her voice betrayed equal parts hope and caution. Oliver's chest felt tight. He nodded, though what he could truly promise, he didn't know. Over the next week, Oliver found himself returning to the modest flat multiple times. His assistant seemed baffled by the unexplained gaps in his schedule. Investors and partners noticed a shift. Oliver was less present in glam events, more distracted. Some even gossiped that he might be chasing a new love affair. Only Sebastian, his confidant, had a clue that the reason was far more complicated. With each visit, Oliver got to know the triplets better. He discovered Lily's unstoppable energy, Iris's cautious curiosity, and James's quiet determination. Slowly, the children warmed up to him, no longer seeing him as a bizarre intruder. Once, Lily even fell asleep on his lap, a moment that jolted Oliver's heart in a way he never expected. He felt paternal instincts blossoming, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. But outside Naomi's small living room, Oliver faced a mounting crisis. The press had gotten wind that he'd been spotted in Islington near a run-down flat. Rumors swirled. A tabloid reporter called to ask if Oliver was involved in a secret affair. "This is the last thing I need," Oliver thought. If the media discovered the triplets, his carefully crafted philanthropic empire might spin out of control, overshadowed by a scandal about him fathering children and abandoning them. Naomi, for her part, refused to let him treat the triplets as some PR inconvenience. "I'm not going to hide them," she stated bluntly. "If you're ashamed, walk away. But they deserve better than being a secret." Oliver wrestled with that. He wasn't ashamed of them yet. He dreaded the public fallout, the immediate karma that might descend once the truth emerged. A part of him realized he deserved it. I used to sneer at my old life, and now it's come back in threefold. Confrontation arrived on a sunny afternoon when Sebastian arranged a meeting in Oliver's penthouse, warning him that a major business partner had caught wind of a personal scandal. The partner threatened to pull out of a significant real estate project unless Oliver explained the situation. Furious, Oliver paced the penthouse as Sebastian looked on. "What do I tell them?" Oliver seethed. "That I fathered triplets with an ex I abandoned. They'll see me as irresponsible, a liability. The media will have a field day. I'll lose investors, donors." Sebastian sighed. "Harrington, you can't keep them hidden forever. Maybe it's time to come clean. Spin it as a heartwarming fatherhood story if you must." A pang of guilt stung Oliver's chest. Spin them? They're my children, not marketing tools. Surprised at his own words, he sank into a chair, head in hands. He realized how drastically his perspective had changed. "But I can't let everything I built collapse. I've got employees, stakeholders, lives depend on me." Sebastian placed a supportive hand on Oliver's shoulder. "People respect honesty more than cover-ups. If you handle this right, take responsibility, show genuine care for your kids, it might not be the disaster you fear." Oliver's mind whirled. So this is what immediate karma looks like, he thought grimly. The man who once prided himself on forging philanthropic alliances, now worried about philanthropic donors, recoiling from the truth of his neglected fatherhood. He reached a decision. "I need to speak to Naomi. This has to be on our terms, no more secrets." That evening, Oliver visited Naomi's flat again. The children were in bed, lulled by bedtime stories. Naomi greeted him at the door, exhaustion etched on her face. She gestured for him to keep his voice low. They just fell asleep. He nodded, stepping inside. The living room lights glowed softly, revealing scattered toys. The normality of it all, a lived-in space for a loving mother, and her triplets contrasted sharply with his sterile penthouse. Oliver sat on the couch, inhaling deeply to steady himself. "We have to talk about making this public. My business partners suspect something. If the press finds out on their own, it'll be a scandal." Naomi's jaw tightened. "So you want to reveal them as part of some damage control?" Oliver grimaced. "It's more than that. I want to do right by them. I'm done running. But I need your help to handle the announcement carefully. I'm worried about how it'll affect them. Paparazzi harassment. Tabloids." Naomi studied him for a moment, then softened. "I don't want our kids to be hounded by cameras, but I also don't want them hidden like a dirty secret." Oliver nodded, voice quiet. "I understand. Maybe I can arrange a press release that focuses on me stepping into fatherhood responsibilities. A statement about how we're co-parenting. This way, the narrative is ours to shape." A flicker of uncertainty danced in Naomi's eyes. "People might judge us. They'll dig into my personal life, your past, everything." He reached out, gently placing a hand over hers. She tensed initially, then relaxed. "I'll do my best to protect you and the triplets from the worst of it," Oliver vowed. "I know words are cheap, but I'm serious." For the first time, genuine vulnerability crossed Naomi's face. She nodded slowly, a tear escaping. "All right, we do it together or not at all." Within a week, Oliver's PR team orchestrated a carefully worded press release. It was simple yet momentous. Oliver Harrington is proud to announce his recent discovery of fatherhood to triplets born to Miss Naomi Carter. Both parties are committed to co-parenting and ensuring the children's well-being. The release included no photos, no sensational details, just a factual statement. Oliver's philanthropic brand had pitched it as a story of a successful entrepreneur stepping up to new responsibilities. But immediate karma wouldn't let him off easy. Within hours, tabloids exploded with headlines, Millionaire's secret triplets exposed. Harrington's hidden family, love child scandal. Talk shows debated whether Oliver had neglected the mother or if Naomi had withheld the truth. Some pinned the blame on Naomi's timing, while others condemned Oliver's prior callousness. At the epicenter, Oliver and Naomi shielded the children from the chaos. Paparazzi camped outside Naomi's building, so she temporarily moved the triplets to a friend's house. Oliver's company stock dipped slightly amid uncertainty. Donors demanded explanations, and skeptics labeled his philanthropic gestures hypocritical. Worse still, a live interview was scheduled on a popular talk show, and the host hinted at a no-holds-barred approach. Oliver felt trapped, seeing how the tabloids invaded Naomi's privacy. She texted him updates, reporters banging on the door again, had to sneak out the back. The guilt in Oliver's stomach grew. He recognized that in rising to the top, he'd never considered how a fall from grace might harm the people closest to him. The scheduled TV interview was a chance for Oliver to clarify the situation, but also a potential minefield. Naomi was hesitant about joining him, unwilling to parade the triplets on camera. Ultimately, Oliver went alone to the studio, intending to defend Naomi's character and show accountability for his kids. The set was brightly lit, the host known for her blunt questioning. Oliver sat in a plush chair under the glare. Cameras zoomed in. Millions are watching, he told himself, swallowing nerves. The host, Asha Patel, wasted no time. Mr. Harrington, you built your brand on philanthropy and responsibility. Can you explain how you only just discovered you have 3 children, now nearly 3 years old? Oliver took a breath. I neglected an important part of my past. I shut out someone who once supported me wholeheartedly. In doing so, I unknowingly deprived my children of a father. There's no excuse, but I'm trying to make it right. Asha pressed on. Some say Miss Carter tried to contact you, but you blocked her. You told the world you're a champion for disadvantaged communities. Yet you left your own children financially unstable. Isn't that hypocritical? Oliver's heart pounded. The weight of immediate karma pressed on him. He nodded slowly. Yes, it is. I was so focused on climbing higher that I ignored where I came from. My philanthropic work was genuine, but I failed to look after my own family. I accept that criticism. Surprise flickered in Asha's eyes, her next barb poised. So what now? Is this about salvaging your reputation, or do you really intend to be a father? He locked his gaze on the camera. I intend to be a father, he said firmly. I owe that to my children and to myself, to truly live the values I preach. The interview aired, generating mixed reactions. Some admired Oliver's direct admission of guilt, praising his honesty. Others dismissed it as damage control. But crucially, the sensational onslaught eased somewhat. People had a new angle to discuss. Maybe Harrington is earnestly stepping up. Investor confidence wavered but didn't collapse. Donors withheld final judgment, waiting to see if Oliver followed through. Meanwhile, Naomi watched the broadcast with the triplets napping in a friend's spare bedroom. She had tears in her eyes. She'd never seen Oliver so open, so vulnerable in public. It was surreal and oddly relieving. For years, she'd harbored resentment that Oliver never faced the consequences of discarding her. Now the world sees his flaws. A phone call from Oliver followed. His voice was subdued. Did you see the interview? She cleared her throat. Yes, it was honest. Thank you for not attacking me or twisting the story. He exhaled audibly, as though letting go of tension. I meant what I said. I've arranged a safer place for you and the kids to stay, at least until the paparazzi calm down. A friend of mine owns a small townhouse in a gated community. Would you consider it? Naomi hesitated, wary of being beholden to him, but the kids needed normalcy. Let me think about it. Oliver swallowed. Sure. Let me know soon. It's not forever, just until it's safe for them. In the following weeks, Oliver took more tangible steps. He arranged a legal agreement for co-parenting, ensuring child support and setting up a trust fund for the triplets' future. He visited them regularly, even helped Naomi relocate to the townhouse. The days of ignoring her calls were gone. Instead, they cautiously navigated this new dynamic. No longer purely driven by image, Oliver discovered an unanticipated joy in fatherhood. He read bedtime stories, learned how to tie tiny shoelaces, and even endured messy attempts at finger painting. Naomi watched with a mix of relief and lingering skepticism. Could he maintain this commitment, or would he revert to his old ways once the media storm passed? He also faced blowback in the business sphere. Some deals fell through. A competitor launched a smear campaign, painting Oliver as a heartless mogul who only pretends philanthropy. But Oliver found new allies, CEOs, who empathized with his confession, praising his bravery in making amends. The complicated swirl of consequences was overshadowed by the night and day shift in Oliver's personal priorities. At times, frustration gnawed at him. He had soared so high with unrelenting ambition, and now life demanded he scale back for the sake of 3 toddlers. Yet each time Lily squealed in delight, or Iris showed him a drawing, or James nestled in his arms, Oliver felt an odd sense of fulfillment that boardroom triumphs never gave him. A turning point arrived when Oliver decided to host a modest party, nothing like his lavish galas, to celebrate the children's 3rd birthday. He rented a cozy community hall near the townhouse, inviting just close friends and some of Naomi's family. There were balloons, a homemade cake, and children's music that replaced the usual classical quartets or jazzy DJs. On the day of the party, the triplets ran around, dazzled by the decorations and gifts. Oliver, wearing jeans for perhaps the first time in public memory, helped Naomi string up streamers. He occasionally fumbled, earning a playful laugh from Naomi. Something about the scene felt healing, like bridging the gap between the worlds Oliver had inhabited. When the children blew out their birthday candles, Oliver stood by them, guiding their little hands. Applause echoed in the small hall. For a moment, he felt tears prick his eyes. This was a far cry from the black tie soirees he was used to, but the warmth here was real. Naomi, noticing his emotion, gently squeezed his shoulder. Neither spoke, but the gratitude in their eyes was mutual. After the party ended and guests trickled out, Oliver lingered to help Naomi clean up. The triplets, exhausted by excitement, dozed in a corner on a makeshift cushion pile. Naomi tossed leftover plates into a bin, and Oliver stacked chairs. The quiet closeness felt more intimate than any evening they'd shared in their old life. "Remember those dinners we'd cooked together in that tiny kitchen?" Oliver remarked suddenly, nostalgia striking him. Naomi gave him a wistful smile. "I do. We were broke but content with simple things." She paused, setting down a stack of napkins. "What happened to us, Oliver?" he sighed, leaning against a table. "I got fixated on being something bigger. I told myself I deserved more, and in doing so, I threw away what actually made me happy." He cast a glance at the sleeping triplets. "I can't change the past, but I'm sorry for hurting you, for leaving you alone with them." Naomi's eyes shone with tears. "It was tough, but it made me stronger. And if this is real, if you're truly here for them, then we can move forward." She studied his expression. "But you have to be sure. They can't handle heartbreak again if you vanish." Oliver swallowed, stepping closer. "I'll stay. This is bigger than my pride. I want to be in their lives. And, if you'll let me, maybe in yours too." A tremor ran through him. He never thought he'd speak those words. Pride once forbade it. Naomi bit her lip, uncertainty mingling with the glimmer of hope. "Let's take it one step at a time. Co-parent first, and see if anything else grows from that." He nodded. That was enough for now. They gently woke the triplets and took them home, an unspoken bond tentatively rekindling between Oliver and Naomi. Outside that quiet bubble, Oliver's brand slowly stabilized. In interviews, he acknowledged his past failings as a father, framing them as lessons that shaped a more genuine philanthropic approach. Some critics still sneered, calling it a strategic PR redemption arc, but donors who met him sensed a shift, a sincerity that had been absent. He no longer boasted about conquest after conquest. Instead, he spoke about the importance of family support systems and real empathy for single parents. The tabloids eventually moved on to fresher scandals. The paparazzi in front of Naomi's townhouse thinned. Investors, seeing Oliver maintain a responsible role, reaffirmed their contracts. Slowly, the immediate karma that had crashed into his life turned into an ongoing lesson he embraced: humility. He realized that in building an empire, you can't discard the people who believed in you at the start. One day, after tucking the triplets in, Oliver walked Naomi to the door. She teased him about missing a big society gala for bedtime stories. He shrugged, a small grin on his face. Those galas feel hollow now. Naomi studied him, then gave a gentle nod, as if acknowledging his growth. She left him with a shy smile that lingered in his mind long after she'd gone. In the months that followed, Oliver Harrington's life found a new balance. He still oversaw major real estate projects, but he carved out evenings to visit the triplets or host them at his penthouse. Child-proofing it, an adventure in itself. Naomi accompanied them sometimes, ensuring they felt safe in a new environment. The building staff, initially shocked at the presence of 3 noisy toddlers, quickly learned to adore them. Oliver formed fresh routines: pizza nights, Sunday park outings, trips to child-friendly museums. Investors who once only saw a cutthroat businessman now witnessed him scheduling calls around nap times, occasionally stepping away from a meeting to handle a toddler meltdown. His philanthropic work gained authenticity, driven by personal stakes in giving kids a better start. As for Naomi, she navigated this new closeness with guarded optimism. She respected the steps Oliver took, but they remained cautious about labeling their relationship as anything romantic. Their priority was the triplets' stability. Yet moments of shared laughter, or the exchange of a knowing glance, hinted that the old spark hadn't entirely died. Late one afternoon, Oliver found himself alone in the penthouse. The triplets were with Naomi, and a hush settled in the lavish space. He gazed at the city lights from the floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting on the path that led here. He once believed he'd have the last laugh, leaving behind anyone who questioned his ruthless climb to the top. Instead, his ex had shown up with triplets, delivering a wake-up call that forever changed his trajectory. He recalled those early days, sneering at the notion that personal attachments could overshadow ambition. But immediate karma had arrived in the form of 3 small faces, demanding he confront his failings. And in doing so, he'd discovered a deeper sense of purpose than all the glitzy events combined. As night enveloped London, Oliver felt a calm satisfaction. Tomorrow, the triplets would visit for a day of baking cookies and building blanket forts. Then the day after, a meeting with an art school foundation to expand scholarship programs for young parents. He was still Oliver Harrington, the millionaire investor, but now something more: father, partner, man learning humility. The final laugh he once coveted no longer mattered. Living a real life did. Oliver Harrington's life flipped when his ex appeared with triplets, shattering the cold facade he'd painstakingly built. In confronting the children he never knew he had, Oliver discovered that real love, responsibility, and even the messy chaos of crayons and bedtime stories carried more weight than any deal or social conquest. Though his confession sparked media chatter and doubts among investors, Oliver leaned into fatherhood with genuine openness. The world witnessed a man once obsessed with image evolve into a man who treasures his children above all else. If you were captivated by this journey of karma, redemption, and unexpected family, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything. Stay tuned for more riveting tales.